Coming up on Tempo in Depth, we travel the globe with our neighbors involved in international outreach. First, meet a team of Lafayette students helping high schoolers from Madagascar get into American universities. Then see some of the photographer Frank Smith's amazing images from India, South Sudan, and Haiti. Plus, we'll learn about a local nonprofit that spreads literacy to countries all over the world. A look at how our community reaches out to nations near and far. Don't go anywhere. Tempo in Depth starts right now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Laura McHugh. Tonight, we hope to inspire you to make the world a better place. That's what many businesses, schools, and organizations in our region hope to accomplish through international outreach. On the campus of Lafayette College in Easton, a group of students use Facebook and email to keep in touch with their new friends in Madagascar, a large island nation off the southeastern coast of Africa. I recently had the chance to learn more about this special program aimed at bringing more Malagasy students to America. Adjusting to the rigors of college life often proves difficult enough.
So these are the Lime 2 team, right?
Now imagine starting at age 16, in a foreign country, more than 8,000 miles from the only home you've ever known. Now you have some idea what Rebecca Ramingami-Hanta faced when she first stepped onto the campus of Lafayette College in August 2012.
I'm learning every day from every area, and I really like it very much.
The always smiling Rebecca, now 17, rose to the challenge of double majoring in international affairs and economics with passion and determination. Her goal? To one day return to her home country of Madagascar.
I want to create an educational center back home, and I want to help women in difficulties like single mother, have a center for them, and that's my dream.
She's done really well here, and to me, she sort of shows how successful the Malagasy students can be here. Very determined, very eager to learn everything she can and go back and make Madagascar a better place.
As she sips a cup of hot cocoa with her good friend Emily Noel.
Rebecca's like my little sister. Literally, we get lunch together and dinner together all the time.
Rebecca says she wouldn't be here in America pursuing her dream without Emily and her peers from the Lafayette Initiative for Malagasy Education, called LIME for short.
We're trying to help students come to America to study so they can go back to Madagascar and make the country better than it already is.
Founded in 2010 by Professor David Stifel, the LIME program sends 10 Lafayette College students to Madagascar each year. During a 2 to 3 week winter term, the Lafayette students teach high schoolers from Madagascar, called Malagasys, how to apply to American colleges.
This was an opportunity for our students to work with Malagasy students to get a different type of education that they would get in the French system, and one that will broaden their horizons and create more opportunities for them.
But why Madagascar? A large, French-colonized island nation off the southern coast of Africa.
The real Madagascar is full of people who are lovely people. And the countryside is beautiful as well. But it's also one of the poorest countries in the world. And so life is difficult, and people are looking for opportunities to better their lives.
Less than 100 Malagasy students study in American colleges. To increase that number, Lafayette students work with students from a public high school in Madagascar's capital city. They prepare them for the SATs and the test of English as a foreign language, help them complete admission forms, and practice English, a third language for most behind Malagasy and French.
And they always say, I want to achieve my dream, I want to achieve my dream. And their dream is to make Madagascar a wonderful place. And it is, but the students realize how poor it is. They know that, and they just want to make it better because they love it.
They build relationships that last long after the college students return to campus.
A lot of them on Facebook. They're all over Facebook, and I get a message from them like pretty much every week.
That's how Rebecca stayed in touch with Emily since they first met in 2011. In 2012, she became the first Lyme student to attend college in America.
She just wants to learn so much and will do anything. She went through feats to get here and feats to get to the high school that we were teaching at, and she just has done astounding things.
In August, Lafayette will welcome its second Malagasy student, a young woman named Priska, who happens to be Rebecca's best friend.
Actually really exciting. I worked with Priska the hours before she sent off her application, so the finishing touches on her personal statement and application, I got to spend those last moments with her before we sent it off.
Next year, Rebecca will return to Madagascar as part of the Lyme team to show other students what's possible.
Because without the Lyme program, I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't realize my biggest dream, and I wouldn't be able to go back, because I hope to go back and change something in my country.
She hopes to inspire other students to follow in her footsteps. Photographer Frank Smith joins me now. Frank has worked with a number of organizations, nonprofits, to capture images from all around the world in an effort to raise awareness for specific causes. Frank, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure, thank you.
What's your purpose when you go out and shoot?
Well, my passion is photography, and I have a full-time job, but my avocation is photography. And of late, I've focused a fair amount of my attention on what I call philanthropic photography. And this allows me the opportunity to travel to many parts of the world for many different causes.
Where are some of the places that you visited and photographed?
Well, in July of 2011, I was fortunate to travel to Africa, and actually in several countries, Uganda and Sudan. And I traveled there with the intent of trying to help an organization called Alarm. It has to do with the reconciliation efforts that are taking part in that part of the world. And I was fortunate that I was able to time that trip right around the same time that the South was going to secede from the North, so I was actually able to witness the birth of a nation at the same time.
I'm always amazed when I look at your photographs that we're not looking at landscapes, we're not looking at buildings, we're looking at people.
That's correct. And that's a big part of it. And part of my task was, for this organization, was to bring back a story to tell a little bit about the efforts that are taking place in that part of the world, and their intent was to use the images that I bring back to help with that story and use that for their marketing campaigns and some of the other efforts in trying to bring awareness to the United States.
You've also traveled to India. What did you do there?
Well, India, that was one of the more challenging projects that I was asked to do. I went there with an organization called Worthwhile Wear. It has to do with the child sex trade. And we traveled to Mumbai and Pune, and as part of that assignment, I actually was asked to go into some of the brothels that were there, and this is something that was totally out of my comfort zone, and see if we could photograph some of the women and people involved there to tell their story and how they got trapped into these situations, again with the hope and intent of bringing this awareness back. So that the whole effort is about trying to avoid these situations.
In one of those photographs from Mumbai, there's a beautiful woman, and she's standing sort of in the foreground, and there's a huge, just what looks like a mound of rubble in the background. What are we actually seeing in that photograph?
Well, this woman, that's where she lives, and immediately out her door is one of the largest slums and the largest dumps in the world. And it's all kinds of refuge that is dumped behind her living quarters, if you will. And again, the intent of that photograph was to show the contrast of this smiling young lady with this amazing amount of debris behind her.
Some of your most amazing images, in my opinion, came from a trip to Haiti.
Yes, that was an assignment that I worked with an organization called ITOT, and this is an organization that deals with handicapped children around the world, and their purpose and intent is to be able to provide therapy and care to people that don't have resources or access to these resources, if you will. And again, that trip involved, again, trying to create awareness to the problem and the lack of resources that are there. And what they do is they try to bring training to both the person involved and the family members, so that they have an opportunity to administer care after the training takes place.
It looked like a lot of those photographs were taken either in a medical facility or some kind of orphanage.
Well, where we traveled were primarily orphanages, and in Haiti in particular, if you have a disability, you're looked at as somewhat of an outcast, and in many cases, the children there are left and end up in orphanages, and that's where a lot of the focus was again to bring awareness to those situations.
I wanted to ask you specifically about the photograph of the girl in the pink shirt.
Well, I took that picture and her face is not shown, and I did that on purpose, but if you look closely at the photograph, it says, "If you think I'm cute, you should see my mom." And the reason that was significant to me in any event was the fact that this poor little girl probably has no idea who her mom was. It was obviously a shirt that was donated, so that really resonated with me. And she turned out to be a real sweet young lady, allowed me to spend a fair amount of time with her. I photographed her for actually probably in excess of an hour, and just a pleasant young lady, but the impact of that shirt is what prompted me to take that image.
What do you hope that people will take away from your photographs, the ones they're seeing today and maybe others that they find on their own?
Well, many years ago when I started in my photography path, I took pictures with the intent of creating memories. Now my photography is about telling stories, and my hope is that these stories will resonate with people around the world that may not be aware of the problems that we have in other parts of the world. And the hope is for this ultimately to bring alleviation to some of these issues and awareness, and that we as a world can work to maybe minimize that going forward.
Frank, thank you so much for making it a part of your day to be here with us tonight. I'm really grateful.
The pleasure is mine.
Thank you. Well, for many of us, there's nothing quite like a good book. Almost 3 billion books are sold each year in the United States, and that doesn't even include ebooks. Yet there are people who don't have access to books. Lehigh Valley residents Scott and Kathy Lieber decided to do something about that. They created Judith's Reading Room, a nonprofit which supplies books to active duty members of the U.S. military. They supply children here and in developing countries with books. Since 2010, they've distributed more than 50,000 books to those who need them. Here's Tempo in Depth's Grover Silcox with more.
What does a good book mean to you?
It transports you out of your ordinary life and into something extraordinary.
And there is still something to be said for just having a good old-fashioned book.
I love to read all kinds of mysteries and novels and biographies and autobiographies and everything there is.
It's everything to me, to hold a book, to feel a book.
King Max, Who Stole the Wizard of Oz?
Like a lot of people, Kathy and Scott Lieber love to get their hands on a good book. They've shared that passion throughout their 40-year marriage. But they know that millions of people have limited or no access to books. That's why they founded Judith's Reading Room, a Bethlehem-based nonprofit which collects donated gently used or new books and distributes them to those who need them.
We founded Judith's Reading Room as a legacy in remembrance of my oldest first cousin, Judith F. Krug, who was with the American Library Association for 40 years. And her main mandate was to support the First Amendment, the freedom to read.
The U.S. military knocked on their door first. Active duty soldiers at Camp Phoenix in Afghanistan wanted a base library. No problem. The Liebers and their hundreds of volunteers sent the books. The soldiers were so grateful, they dedicated the base library to Judith Krug. The volunteers at Judith's Reading Room continue to inspect, pack, and ship to the base. They even include handwritten letters.
Every box we've ever shipped contains a handwritten letter. We understand the loneliness. We understand that books can take you to a place that is very different from the trenches in Afghanistan.
The Liebers and their volunteers get lots of thank you letters in return from the troops.
Reading helps pass the time between missions and is very relaxing. Major U.S. Army.
Kathy and Scott also learned about the military's efforts to educate Afghan children, so they started sending children's books for the soldiers to give out.
One of their major mandates at Camp Phoenix is called Operation Outreach, which is to teach children English and build schools for children in Afghanistan.
Thank you for your donation of books to Operation Outreach. This will only continue in spreading goodwill from the American people to the Afghans.
In many cases, These are children who've never had a book.
Judith's Reading Room now sends books and libraries to kids and adults in Cambodia, Nigeria, Albania, and Indonesia, and even in the Lehigh Valley, wherever people need books.
I don't care if he's in Bethlehem or if he's in New Delhi, India. It is a child's right to have a book to learn to read.
Literacy itself, regardless of the language, provides empowerment.